What is up, guys? Welcome back to the garage. Finished work, finished at the gym, had something to eat, done all that good stuff, and now we're going to get into this R1 cylinder head. So we have it apart on the most part. We're going to have buckets and shims and everything out, nicely organized over here. And now we are going to take out the valves and begin our process for porting and polishing.
Perfect.
Now, I kind of made a quick little bit here for sanding, so this is a bit cheaper than some of the online options, 90 to 200 odd Australian dollars for a handful of small cartridges that you use for porting and polishing. What I've done is just cut down this bolt here and chucked just a slot, essentially. Use the grinder, just chucked a slot in there, bit of sandpaper on there, and yeah, we've got extra rolls or extra sheets of sandpaper there, which makes it easier. And it's a lot cheaper this way too. It's like $2 for one sheet as opposed to $2 for one cartridge that lasts a lot longer. This is metal specific sandpaper too, so it's actually on a cloth backing. Lasts a lot longer and it gets the work done a lot quicker. This way you just have to spend a bit more time to make that up. Not really a big deal, but that's what I've done. Now, all I'll be doing with this bad boy here, once these valves and everything are out, we are just going to clean it up. We're not going to go ham. We're going to clean up the castings, smooth it out a bit. Maybe with the valves out, I might be able to clean up the area right down the bottom of the valves. We are just going to lap the valves and chuck it all back together. It's not going to be too crazy. It's just a little bit more efficiency and giving me the chance to check the actual valve stems and all of that. Make sure it's good to go before we chuck it back together. And I mean, it's just a case of, well, it's apart, why not? So let's get into that. We'll get these valves out. Just jumping straight into it. So I went and brought this bad boy here. I actually borrowed one identical earlier in the year for the Mercedes, and it was fantastic. So you can see it here. I don't know about you guys, but pictures do wonders for me. Pretty straightforward. Also upside down. But, you know, pretty straightforward. And this is the jig that I've set up to get these valves out. Hopefully it works and I don't just look like I've just slapped it together, but I guess essentially that's exactly what I've done, just slapped it together. Now, the setup that I've got here is I'm just using some stainless hardware to hold it in, and you want to make sure that these are long enough. You can see in here, there's quite a big gap before you get to some thread. Make sure that these bolts are long enough, because the last thing you want, it's soft aluminium, is to yeet on this and to pull one of these bad boys right out. Because yeah, that's not going to be fun trying to use like a time cert or something to try and fix this up. These are just hand tight at the moment. You'll probably leave them hand tight too, to be honest, as long as they're threaded all the way down and tight enough. Now the concept here is we are trying to push these valve springs down and exposing the collets which are either side of that valve, because well, we want to get the valves out, and that's actually the only thing that holds these valves in, even at like 14,000 RPM or whatever these things get up to. And now this is the tool here. So this is the handle. If I went back to when I first used this, I had no fucking idea on what I was doing, even looking at a picture and how to set it up, because there are so many options. You can see here, I'm using the second from the bottom on the far right to get the ones on the intake side out. So getting these ones out, and that's the setup I'm using. I'm using the hole in the middle. So there's 5 holes. I'm using the middle one, and we're going to use the notch right at the end there, and just see if I can kind of jig this together and tap that in there with one hand, and you can see the kind of concept that we're working with here. I'm not too sure. I've never actually taken a motorcycle cylinder head apart, and don't know if I can do this with one hand. Easy. I have to use both hands to actually get them, but you can see there with some light pressure, it's pushing that valve spring down, and yeah, this is going to be a piece of piss. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure it doesn't hang up or snag or start pushing that valve down into your workbench or whatever you have your cylinder head on, obviously, because you don't want to bend it. That's going to be costly. Then you're going to have to buy new performance valves, oversized. You're gonna have to get the CNC ported. You're gonna have to run aftermarket springs, big cams. You're gonna have to get like a GDX 35 82R turbo, run nitrous anti-lack, and I mean, just be careful. Yeah, so I'll get that done. I'll get all of these out and we'll get back to you. Clean bench, pretty much ready to go. Like I gotta swap this bad boy here out for a carbide bit. So the first one we're gonna run is this guy here, pretty chunky, so you want to go real light with this. While I'll be going real light and nice and simple on all of the ports. I like to do one task and I like to do it through and through, complete on all of them, so I know where I'm at, because it's easy to get carried away and just go ham on one, and you're not going to get it quite the same on the others, because I don't know about your short-term memory, but mine is shot. Yeah, so that's what I'll do. The first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of this casting mark on the inside down there. Turn on this chunky light so you can see them chilling in there along the edges there, both sides, in the middle, everywhere. So I'm going to go through and clean all of that up to start with, and then probably work on knife edging, and then get rid of the carbide and probably just go straight to that. And yeah, it should be pretty straightforward, just because I'm not going too crazy with it. And then just turn it around. Going to clean up this lip on here. There's quite a prominent lip just on the other side of the actual valve seat down there. We're going to try and smooth that transition, at least on the outside radius on the roof there. Try and smooth that out a little bit. And some of them are really, like this one's terrible. This one here is really bad. Where's the other one? No, it's this one as well. Some of these lips are pretty horrendous. Obviously, you still make good power. I think these things make like 150 wheel horsepower or so, with basic mods. So that's not too bad if you consider the refinement that you could chuck into it and just get that little bit extra. Now, I've done arms, biceps, tries, traps yesterday, so my arms are pretty cooked today, but still gonna get into it. Let's get it cleaned up and yeah, make a start. Now, spent a bit of time doing this and we are done ski. Well, intake side alone is done. And we're looking pretty good. Nice and simple, and it's kind of hard to get perfect lighting, but actually if I go like this, there we go. A little bit of lighting is usually better than a lot for the old GoPro here. And you can see the floor, that is simply just 120 grit and scuffed up, clean, smooth. It's smooth, but obviously it's still got the 120 grit kind of texture to it, which is what you want. Promotes a little bit of turbulence there to atomize the fuel, like I said before. Knife edged and looking bloody good. Our roof is a little bit smoother, so we get a little bit more speed through there. And the back at that 90, well, it's not really a 90, it's more like a 45. Down the back, right down there, it's a bit smoother too. And then obviously we've cleaned up the transition between the actual valve seat and, ooh boy, nearly lost that. The valve seat and the actual port here. So that's nice and smooth through this section here. I didn't actually touch the backside here. I cleaned it up, and that's it. So same geometry essentially. Our valve guides all through, I didn't touch them. They're nice and flat, nice and small. Some Honda ones actually protrude quite far into the cylinder, but I just left them as is. I did run over the top at the back, just right up there, just because, well, you can't really avoid it when you've got something like this, and it's a little bit of flat spot, but it's equal across a lot. So that's done and dusted. Now we're going to do exactly the same to the exhaust side. Clean her up. I won't knife edge these. These actually have quite a bulbous divider in there, and all I'm going to do on the exhaust side is clean it, and I might actually bring a taper out a little bit just on this part here, or give it a little bit of a taper, I should say, maybe a taper just before it exits the actual head itself. You can see the black mark is actually where the gasket sits, but I don't want to mess with it too much. I don't want to lose velocity or anything that's been designed into the head, so probably just going to add a little bit of a taper there, bring it out a smidge, and we'll just, yeah, exhaust ports are a little bit harder. They're pretty chunky, and each one has a square port inside it. I don't know if you guys can see it. There's a square port in there, and I think that is the air injection, which you get from the airbox and that whole system, which in my case I've actually deleted it, so we got the plates on the rocker cover to get rid of that, and I'll go over that at a later date. But yeah, the castings in here are actually worse than the intake. No, the ones on the exhaust are actually, I don't know. Oh, maybe they're not worse. Maybe they're just covered in carbon, but yep, I'm gonna get in there, we're gonna clean it up, we're gonna make them look good, just like the intake, just like, here it is. That's pretty much gonna be the finished job there. Intake and exhaust ports are all done, nice and clean, mainly concentrated on just the backs and just the roof across there, and smoothing both of those out quite considerably, and getting rid of any casting marks or any kind of big steps in there. Other than that, we are gonna leave it like this. So I'm not looking to go too crazy, namely because I'm not professional at porting and polishing, just cleaning up the casting really. But it's looking pretty good. I could probably go to a finer grit on the exhaust ports here, but not really keen on that. Can't really be bothered doing any more than I have there, and I think that's like 120 grit anyway, so I'm probably just going to leave it there, and we'll have to move on to the valves. So these are actually titanium valves, which means I'm just going to give them a quick wipe down, get any big chunky bits off, and that's probably it. We can't lap them either, not without like a sacrificial set of, there's a bit of nasty looking casting on the inside of there. Nice big hole, nice big pit on the runner there. Anyway, yeah, titanium valves. We can't kind of do much with them except clean them, unless we had a sacrificial set that we could lap the seat and then put new valves in after that, but I don't really want to do that, so yeah, just gonna clean these up. Alright boys, so porting and polishing is done, our valves are back in. They are just titanium valves, and to clean them I've simply just used a soft wire brush, a little bit of degreaser, clean them up pretty well. And you can see, maybe we can turn that down a bit, there we go. Porting and polishing is pretty well done, nice and even, very simple. I didn't change the shape of the actual ports themselves. I did change the shape of the runners in the middle and gave them a bit of a knife edge, but nothing too crazy. Our intake ports, these ones are the intake ports, that is still a little bit roughed up, so we get a bit of turbulence to kind of atomize the fuel and air mixture, so we get a good mix in there. And then scoot around to the exhaust side. Exhaust side is a lot smoother because we just want optimal flow, just moving out of there as fast as possible. Again, we didn't change the port size, and you can see on, maybe you can see on the edge there, just around the bottom, some of them you can still see the exhaust gasket mark. I did not port match it. I didn't bring the whole port out to where the gasket sits. I don't think that's really necessary. All I done was clean up the edge, kind of rolled it over a little bit, like a very small amount, just to just help it out a little bit there. But these ones are a little bit nicer, a little bit smoother than the intake, just because we need that flow. And our valve springs are all back in, very easy using that style of valve spring compressor. You can get most of them done, and then you kind of got to move the leg over and then do the rest, if that makes sense. You can't just kind of bolt it down and do it in one hit. It kind of just doesn't work. Your feet sit over there. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to give this another clean, blow it down with compressed air. We've got like our caps and everything here with our shims and stuff still inside, which can for now just stay here. What I'll do is I'll clean the head. We'll go and give this bad boy another clean as well. I did give it a good clean, but we'll go ahead and do it again. Try and get a little bit more of this carbon buildup and crap off here, and a little bit of buildup in this one specifically. So yeah, a lot of nastiness from cleaning the outside of the motor, but that's where we're at. We'll have to get in there, clean the tops of the pistons, wipe out these bores, spin it up, clean it, make sure all this crap comes out, then head gasket and the head can go on.
2,000 years later.
Alright boys, head is back on. We have everything timed, and what I've done is actually just gone back in and retimed it OEM, so I haven't changed any of the actual settings, and we've got our cam gears just chill banging back on just the OEM setting here, so just the normal bolt holes. You can see we've got some slots, and that allows you to retard and advance and take an exhaust cam independently, moving your power band up and down all over the show. For now, I'm just going to get it running, get it back together, and see how she goes, work out what I want to do with the bike from there, because if I go turbo or a little bit heavy on the nitrous, then well we want to just play with it then, not with a basically stock R1 motor. So that's when I'll do that. Looking pretty good. Our ports are looking sick. I can't get over how well that turned out actually, especially just for a quick job. I probably could have stayed in there for a lot longer and really cleaned it up, but that'll do for now. Exhaust ports are the biggest improvement in my opinion. They were pretty nasty. And so with our head back on, that was the hardest part. I think that's the biggest thing that needed to be done. Just a good service and good clean, make sure all of that's really just put back together nice and tidily. Obviously we're going to swap this out for our manual timing chain tensioner. The guides are perfect, so everything there is good. Our next big step, and probably the last big step, because everything else is really just needing a clean, lefty loosey, righty tighty, all of our bits and pieces like our throttles. The loom might take a little bit because I got to rewrap it, make sure it's all clean, tidy and straight. And then just a whole lot of small bits to clean. Like everything's in fairly good nick. They just need to be cleaned because, well, I don't like dirty stuff. Go through all this, work out what's what. So yeah, that's just going to be a whole lot of cleaning, but the next major part is going to be this guy here. Like I was discussing before, it's going to be our clutch, and I'm going to do that video next, but we really need to sort out these springs because I'm not a fan of that rattling, and I don't want to have to take this out again anytime soon. So the plan here is we're going to weld these, weld some washers in there, we'll shim it up, weld them in, and then chuck it back together. I'm just going to use the stock clutch for now, the stock clutch. I did measure the thickness. There's a couple of hot spots on them, on the actual plates themselves, but it's not that bad. We're going to try that clutch out with the nitrous just to begin with, and then I'll move to the racing clutch that I have for it. But excuse me, the reason I'm using the stock clutch to start with is because with welding this up, it's an uncertain. I'm not entirely sure it's going to work 100%, and I don't want to ruin a whole like $300 and something worth of clutch pack for the sake of seeing if something works. Whereas if it does work and it starts slipping, then I just pull it out, put the other one in, and it'll be good to go. If it does break or something is wrong, I can just go to a billet CNC clutch basket, which is fine. It's a little bit lighter, makes it a little bit harder to ride on the street, but it is what it is. And yeah, that'll be next. But so far looking pretty good. And yeah, so it's porting and polishing, timing the motor, making some big steps, and that, yeah, probably gonna call it for this video. It's probably getting pretty bloody long, and got any questions, like, comment, subscribe, all of that normal YouTube stuff, I guess. And yeah, peace. Thank you for watching.